I am humbled and grateful for the opportunity to speak in this forum. I will first talk about the musical brain and why a world without music would be a world without humans. When you ask a scientist what separates humans from animals, they usually answer language, math, chess. Douglas Adams wrote The Wheel, New York, Wars, and I say music. Music requires the perhaps simplest mental function that just separates us from animals. Humans can hold a pulse in a group. We can clap together in synchrony. What seems very trivial to us is also unique to us. No other species can do this. Yeah, whales can sing, but not in a choir. Gorillas pound on their chests, but not as a combo. And viewed in this light, music was the decisive evolutionary step from animals to humans. Now, research revealed that simply after clapping together, individuals help each other more, trust each other more, and cooperate more with each other. We see these effects already in preschool children. Thus, making music together has a very interesting effect. It unites us. It stimulates social bonding. We do something together. Suddenly, everybody is part of a group. A we emerges. And social bonding fulfills a deep human need, the need to belong. When this need is fulfilled with music, it elicits positive emotions, fun, joy, sometimes even happiness. And these positive emotions support our health and our well-being. Now, all this was important in the evolution of humans because social bonding, cooperation, trust, peacefulness, and health brought humans an important advantage to live longer. I think music was even the main mechanism for social bonding in large groups during the evolution of humans. Analogous to Robin Dunbar's vocal grooming hypothesis, music might have replaced manual grooming as the main mechanism for social bonding during human evolution. Now, according to Dunbar's hypothesis, vocal grooming paved the way for the evolution of language. This view is based on the observation that, similar to manual grooming, human language plays a key role in building and maintaining affiliative bonds and group cohesion. This process is putatively driven by increased group size, which increases the number of social relationships that an individual needs to maintain and monitor. Now, once the number of relationships becomes too large, an individual can no longer maintain its social networks with tactile interactions alone, and selection will favor alternative mechanisms, such as talking to several individuals at the same time. However, compared to the relatively small group size typical for conversations, many more individuals can make music in a group and thus establish and foster social relationships. And this makes music the more obvious candidate to maintain social networks and to increase social cohesion in large groups. Thus, a musical grooming hypothesis seems also plausible to explain the emergence of music, at least as plausible as a vocal grooming hypothesis is for the emergence of language. So, an important effect of individuals making music together is social bonding. Now, making music together means producing sounds at the same time, and that is afforded by music's fundamental structural principles, pulse and scale. Therefore, music is a special case of sound. As opposed to all other sounds, musical sounds have a particular structural organization in both the time domain and in the frequency domain. Now, in the time domain, the most fundamental principle of musical structure is the temporal organization of sounds based on an isochronous grid, the tactus, or the beat. Of course, there are exceptions, such as some kinds of meditation music or some pieces of modern art music, yes, but 99% of human music has a pulse. And in the frequency, that is the pitch domain, the most fundamental principle of musical structure is an organization of pitches according to the overtone series, which results in scales, for example, the pentatonic scales. Inharmonic spectra, for example, of inharmonic metallophones, give rise to different scales, such as the P-Lock and Slendro scales. Again, there are exceptions, such as drum music, but 99% of human music has a scale. Thus, for the vast amount of musical traditions around the globe, and presumably throughout human history, these two principles, isochronous beat and scale pitch, build the nucleus of a universal musical grammar. Out of this nucleus, a seemingly infinite number of musical systems, styles, and compositions evolved. And this evolvement appears to have followed computational principles, principles that have been described, for example, in the Chomsky hierarchy. Now, what about language? Language is actually a special case of music. Both language and music consist of sounds. Language has also important musical features, speech melody, rhythm, timbre, but language does not need a pulse nor a scale. Instead, language has words that can communicate specific meanings. And therefore, only one individual can speak at a time. When two individuals talk across each other, we can't understand what they say, and it doesn't sound good. With music, many individuals can produce sounds at the same time, and it still makes sense. In this regard, language is the music of the individual, and music is the language of the group. This brings along another interesting difference between language and music. For language, semantics is more important than syntax. Mandarin, for example, is a language that has only minimal syntax, and we can make ourselves understood in any language, even if we disregard inflections, declinations, etc. I know a number of Italian words, but hardly any syntax. So when I speak Italian, it sounds rather funny, but Italians can understand me. Syntax makes the understanding of language easier and faster, but we can make ourselves understood even without any syntax due to the semantics of language. For music, on the other hand, syntax is more important than semantics. When humans produce sounds based on an isochronous beat or scale pitch, we recognize it as music. And without such syntactic structure, we hardly recognize sound as music. This is because without syntactic structure, we could not produce sounds together. Thus, without semantics, there is no language, and without syntax, there is no music. Now, it goes without saying that music is also a meaningful phenomenon. But in this talk, I will focus on musical syntax. How is musical syntax processed in the brain? In the second panel here, you can see two chord sequences that I have used in numerous experiments. The left sequence sounds regular. The sequence on the right sounds irregular. Note that there's nothing peculiar about the last two chords of this irregular sequence. When played in isolation, you can hear this. And the same two chords sound regular at the end of this sequence. example, they sound regular. It is only the previous context that makes the last chord sound irregular in the sequence on the right and regular on the sequence on the left. Now, the next panel shows electric brain responses to the last chord. The black solid line indicates brain electric responses when the last chord is the regular ending. The dashed line indicates brain electric responses when the last chord is irregular. And the red line indicates the difference between the two black lines. And even if you're not an expert in brain electric responses, you can easily see that the two black waveforms differ from each other, which tells us that the brains of our participants made a difference between the syntactically regular and irregular chords. Although participants of this experiment were all non-musicians, several of which said about themselves that they were completely unmusical. Their brain responses, however, painted a different picture. We can see that the two black waveforms start to differ from each other already at around 150 milliseconds after the onset of the last chord. So pretty amazing how fast the brains of non-musicians processed this highly complex music syntactic information. Well, as a young scientist in one of the experiments of my PhD, I also localized this brain response, and I found that its main generators are located here where you can see the yellow spheres. This part of the brain is referred to as Broca's area. And back then it was thought that this area in the brain is a language area. And the results of my experiment showed that this area actually also processes music. Now, on the bottom image, you can see results of a functional neuroimaging experiment with similar chord sequences. Again, we see activation of Broca's area by music syntactically irregular chords. We can also see activations in other brain areas, and all of these areas are also part of the so-called language network in the brain. Thus, there is a striking similarity between the music network in the brain and the language network in the brain. And this is illustrated here. The left image shows brain activations when individuals listen to language, and the right image shows brain activations when individuals listen to music. Note the overlap of the activated brain regions, and note that the activations for language are stronger in the left side of the brain and for music stronger in the right side of the brain. And I would also like to invite you here to watch the Human Brains Conversations video by Angela Friedrizi, where she explains the role of these brain regions for language. Now, results such as these indicate language and music are actually processed in the same brain network. Instead of separate networks, there is one single music-language network in the brain. Only that language is processed more strongly in the left side of the brain and music more strongly in the right side of the brain. And that is also why patients with a stroke in the left hemisphere who lost the ability to speak can still sing, even with words. I've seen stroke patients who could sing a song so clearly that it was difficult to believe that they could not say a word. And through singing, these patients can actually learn to speak again. Now, language and music are both part of our human nature. We know this because every human culture has language and music. And this shows us that the human brain is a musical brain. By nature, everybody is musical. Luckily, because this also means that everybody can benefit from the effects of music on health and well-being. For example, we carry out a project on therapeutic effects of music in individuals with Alzheimer's disease. And in this project, not just musicians can participate, but everybody. Another example of healing effects of music is that we can all use the good vibrations of music to make us feel more positive, more cheerful, to switch off worries or depressive thoughts. This already has health-supporting effects. Even in the darkest crisis, listening to pleasant, encouraging music releases a few healthy, fun molecules in the brain. And where one such molecule is released, thousands more will follow. Next, I will talk about why the sound of the voice, and especially of the singing voice, moves us. One reason is that we can powerfully express our emotions with our voice. Laughing, crying, screaming, or speaking with a voice that sounds happy, sad, surprised. Now, these emotion signals are biological signals. We don't need to learn them, and we can understand them around the globe. Yeah, if you went into the Amazon rainforest and met a Yanomami man, you would hear in his voice if he is happy, angry, fearful, or surprised, just as you could see it in his face and body language. And when we hear an emotional expression, we often resonate with it. Emotions can be contagious laughter, crying, panic screams. Now, music is also a biological signal, especially when it imitates emotional speech. Western music often exaggerates the melodic and acoustical aspects of emotional speech. Music is then like a super expressive voice. For example, like a sad sounding voice, sad sounding music is slower, the melody goes downward, has little energy, does not have much pitch variation. Whereas happy sounding music, like a happy voice, has more pitch variation, more energy, is faster, sounds brighter. And that is also why everybody around the globe can recognize emotions expressed in film music, on any piece of music that imitates an emotional voice. Now, my research team once carried out a study with a tribe in Cameroon, playing music to individuals who had never heard Western music before. Yet, they could tell whether that music sounded happy, sad, or scary. Already newborn babies are highly sensitive to the human voice. They hear the music in the voice. They hear when a voice sounds stressed or depressed or warm and patient. And they can't help but resonate with these emotions. And that is also why singing to babies can calm babies down. And parents too, by the way, because we breathe out longer when we sing, and that already calms our bodies down. Already preterm infants calm down with slow, relaxing music, which shows us that we humans are sensitive to music even before birth. We are born with a musical brain. It is part of our human nature. In tonal music, virtually all music pieces feature many occasions where the music sounds like an emotional voice and will likely elicit feelings in us when we resonate with this super expressive voice. If we make music together, and even if we simply hear music in concerts together, we resonate together, we feel together in time, we experience good vibrations together. And experiencing emotions together makes emotions more intense, and it contributes to us feeling socially connected and to creating a feeling of unity. Now, social connection can move us, sometimes so powerfully that we get goosebumps or that we are moved to tears. Being moved goes along with feelings related to social connection, such as sympathy, joy, happiness, or with sadness when a social bond is lost. What happens in the brain when music evokes joy or moves us? It activates this part of the brain that I refer to as happiness system. This system generates emotions associated with social bonding and social attachments. And in my research, I discovered that music is particularly powerful in activating this system. When I designed one of the first brain studies on music and emotion, about 20 years ago, it was considered as risky and bold, because the academic view was that music cannot activate any central emotion structure deep in the brain. Now, this view has been thoroughly revolutionized in the past years, because today we know from many brain studies that music can activate each and every emotion system in the brain. And this is illustrated here. Music can activate our vitalization system, motivating us, encouraging us, or helping us to calm down and relax. There's actually a nerve that goes directly from our ears into this system. Music can also activate the brain system for pleasure, releasing pleasure molecules that keep our brains young and healthy. An activation of this system with music can also help to reduce pain. And music has effects on our subconsciousness. For example, when the subconsciousness generates depressive or demotivating thoughts, music can influence thoughts in a way that they become more positive. Thus, we can use music to attain peace of mind. When we listen to positive sounding music and kind of engage in this music by breathing along with the music or tapping along with the music, our thoughts become more positive. We can easily switch off negative thoughts and negative thought loops. Now, the fact that music can influence every emotion structure in the brain is highly relevant for the therapeutic use of music, because in all chronic disorders and diseases, activity in some of these emotion structures is not quite right, and music can help to get that right again. For example, in our Alzheimer project, we try to stimulate the generation of new nerve cells in the brain's happiness system with music. We sing together, feel together, experience social connection, we are moved together. Now, these thoughts illustrate that at its core, music is not just a cultural epiphenomenon of modern human societies. It is not just auditory cheesecake, but music is deeply rooted in our brain and thus at the heart of what makes us human. Thanks for listening.